All right, hello, Charles. My name is Jonathan Jennings. I'm going to ask you to quickly introduce yourself so that we can get to know you a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Hey, Jonathan. Hey, I'm Charles Collins. I'm currently a United Airlines pilot based in Chicago. I've been a pilot with them for a little over 2 years. Before that, I was a regional airline pilot at PSA Airlines for just under 3 years. And before that, I just did some flight instructing. And a little bit of that was done at Middle Tennessee State University, where I went to school for the professional pilot program. So that's kind of what I've been doing the past a little bit about my basic background information.
Very cool, very cool. That is my dream job. I'm an undergraduate at MTSU right now. I'm currently in interviewing COMM 3340. That's what this interview is for. And I'm recording this interview for that purpose and that purpose only. So that you know that this video is not going to go absolutely everywhere. This is what it's for. It's for academic purposes only. Um, and the purpose of this interview, sorry, is to get your professional insight on becoming a pro pilot for uh, a major airline company like United. Get your insight on the training requirements, the academics, and the lifestyle balance associated with commercial aviation. And it shouldn't take more than about 20 minutes.
Okay,
Uh,
perfect.
so I got a few questions for you. I kind of sent them to you earlier, just to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about. So what sparked your motivation to pursue a career as a commercial pilot?
Well, honestly, it's pretty simple. I know a lot of guys and girls in this field. They kind of were born with it, or their parents were pilots, and they kind of had that itch in their blood from since they were real young. For me, when I was in high school, I just wasn't really sure what path I wanted to go down. But when I did grow up, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. My grandfather was a pilot and a flight instructor, and he did some mechanic work as well. So I was kind of always around airplanes growing up, and I just had that in the back of my mind that it was something I may enjoy, but wasn't 100% sure. So, someone that my dad worked with had a small private plane uh, at the regional airport. So we went up for just a quick lesson, kind of a discovery flight, just to see what it was about. And that really sparked my interest. So I started taking lessons, and it just really kind of grabbed a hold of me as far as the wanting to become a pilot. So started going down that route and living in Tennessee, looking around, realized that Middle Tennessee was a good spot to go. So toured that, and then it was kind of off to the races from there.
Oh, very cool. So you went on the discovery flight with your grandfather?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, just with this guy that my dad had worked with, who had
Okay.
his own little small plane. Because I would have maybe had the itch a little bit more, but my grandfather passed away when I was pretty
Oh,
young,
I'm sorry.
so I just kind of knew that stuff from when I was young and seeing it then. But as time progressed, I just didn't, wasn't around it as much. But I still kind of had it in the back of my mind that it was something that I may enjoy,
Oh,
and
very
didn't
cool.
realize it was as easy as you could just go to the airport. Obviously, if you know someone that has an airplane, that's nice. But really, any airport will take you on a discovery flight and kind of see what you think about it. So that was pretty cool, and I think that really kind of solidified the itch that is something I would like to pursue as a career.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Uh, Perfect. Perfect. So how has your perspective changed on the profession since you started? And kind of walk me through evol if that changed as you evolved from CFI to minor and major airlines.
Okay, well, really, it's always been ever since I started flying and working towards my private pilot certificate. It was something that, I was always like, well, I want to get to the next step. The next step looks so much better. If I could just have instrument done, if I could just be commercial rated, that would be awesome. And then if I could just be a CFI and be teaching, that would be so great. And then once I started teaching, I was like, man, it would be awesome to have that job at the airlines. And the regionals just sounded amazing. Just flying a jet and not having to work, all day every day, doing these same lessons I was doing for forever as an instructor. It just seemed like I wanted to get to that next step. And once I got to the regionals, it's you love it, and then you're like, hey, instructing wasn't so bad. That was a pretty fun job. I enjoyed teaching. And then you start getting that feeling of, oh, I'd love to be at the majors. Being at the majors would be such an awesome milestone, and be there. And as time progresses and you do something like this as a career, you just you start to really know so much about everything, and you just kind of get in a rhythm, get in a flow, and you just enjoy the work. Um, and you realize that all those other things were great stepping stones,
Hmm.
and none of them were bad, and they were all a really great learning experience. And when it comes down to it, those basic principles you learn when you first start flying are, what you're still doing today, just flying the airplane. There's just differences. Work rules get better as you get to different places. Destinations can get better, and obviously, different types of equipment that you can fly can always change when you fly for different companies. So, I guess the perspective is just that I always really enjoyed it, and I just kind of like to keep learning all the time. And no matter what I'm flying, I just want to kind of stay with that mindset of learning and realizing all the things I did in the past were
Yeah.
were really good for what I'm doing now.
Oh, very cool. So, it's okay to pretty much what I gathered from that is it's okay to want the next step just to make sure that I slow down and enjoy what I'm doing at the time too. Not
Yeah,
just okay. Very
yeah, and
cool.
just realize that everything that you do is some form of a learning experience that's going to benefit you one way or the other uh, in the future when you're flying different things or working in different companies.
Okay, cool. So yeah, could you describe a typical week and what it looks like flying for United and regarding your pilot schedule, time away from home, and maintaining that work-life balance?
Sure. Well, like I said, as you progress and you get to different airlines, once you get to a major airline, there's some things, we could talk about it for hours, but work rules seem to be a little bit better. There's more pilots physically on the seniority list. So there's more things that can be covered and more opportunities for the way that they schedule things. So usually pilots are broken down by two different kinds. There's commuters and there's pilots that live in base. So, you have to be based in one of the pilot bases that the company has. So for me, I'm based in Chicago, but I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I'm a commuter. I commute to Chicago to start my trips. So for me, it's beneficial as a week goes to be on the road for a period of time and not too long, but also not too short. So that way I can maximize my time away and be able to make money and things like that, but not be going back and forth from the
Oh yeah,
airport
yeah.
and home and things like that. So for me, I typically work about 3 to 4 days on a trip. So per week, I'll usually do a 4 day trip is what I prefer. And being kind of junior on the seniority list, only being there for a little over 2 years means that I typically work on the weekends. Sometimes I'll get a weekday trip, but most of the time it's weekends. So I'll usually go to the airport on Thursday or Friday, and I'll go to Knoxville. I'll catch a flight from Knoxville to Chicago, where I'll then start my trip. Be on the road for 4 days. Could go anywhere. It could be very domestic, where we're just kind of bouncing around from the Midwest to the East Coast, maybe down to Florida, things like that, up to New York. And then sometimes it's a lot of transcontinental flights. We'll fly Boston to uh, Los Angeles or vice versa, or fly
Hmm.
all the way from Newark to San Francisco.
Oh wow.
And that's just a lot of time sitting, a lot of time, doing flying one leg. So the variety changes, and that's all dependent upon the type of aircraft you fly. I'm currently on the 737, so it can vary wildly. You can do 3 legs a day, bouncing around real short 1 hour flights, or you can do 5 6 hour flights, and that can range from flying down to the Caribbean, South America, Alaska, Canada, whatever. But
Oh
for
wow.
the most part, it changes. But I try and break it up a little bit. I'll try and fly some of those shorter kind of quick hops, and then some other trips I'll try and venture out and go more transcontinental type stuff. And then once the trip wraps up, I try and just get trips that I can actually get home on the same day. That's the most important thing to me, because once you're working, uh, you really just want to be home when it's over with. You don't want to have to stay in a hotel and then
True.
catch the next flight in the morning. So for me, I like to bid on trips that can get done at a decent time, either in the morning or real early afternoon, and fly straight back to Knoxville. And then the work life balance is key. So the big thing is, since I'm a commuter, I try and just go out, basically knock work out for those 4 days, and then try and have a somewhat equal amount of time off when I get back. And for me, like I said, since I work the weekends, I'm usually home during the week. So that is beneficial because everything is open. I can try and accomplish things that need to be done.
Hmm.
And there is a kind of fine line, and it's kind of a learning experience. And sometimes it differs, and you need to tailor your schedule due to needing certain days off, and you kind of time compress your trips together where you only have maybe one day off in between.
Hmm.
But it's then you reward yourself by having maybe a week or 2 weeks off at the end of the month. So it's there's definitely a balance, but for me, it's trying to have an equal ish amount of time off after a trip is complete, so I can recover and catch up on sleep, and then also just catch up on things that need to be done around the house, and
Yeah,
also socializing with friends and family and things of that nature.
very cool. So it sounds like you can work as hard as you want to work, uh, but also like balance it out. It's really dependent on like your needs as well as not just company needs. So if the
Right.
company's not just telling you, "Hey, we need you to fly," pretty much every single day this month, it's not like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like that. And some people are totally different than me. Some people really enjoy being at work and making that extra money or whatever the case
Hmm.
may be, and they just enjoy their work they're doing. But for me, I like to have that balance, like you talked about. So I
Yeah.
like to go to work and knock stuff out, accomplish it. Sometimes I'll even work for 6 days in a row. I'll pair up 2 3 day trips together, and then once I get home, I'll have a week off, and try
Okay.
and knock something out that I need to knock out here, and whether it's plans or a trip or just things that need to be done around the house. I like definitely like to have that balance where I work, but I also have plenty of time off to do what I need to do.
Oh, very cool. And you're a first officer, correct?
That's correct. Yep, first
Okay.
officer.
Yeah. So thinking back to your training, getting into that United First Officer position, how did the academic and simulator training events differ from like what I'm going through, the university flight labs? How,
Mhm.
how did those compare?
It's honestly very similar, and I think programs like that, especially at MTSU, do a fantastic job of preparing you for the airlines. Um, every simulator and training event that I've had is very similar to what was the basic principles of how MTSU taught. Was
Okay.
you have an instructor, you meet with the instructor, and it's usually a one-on-one type thing where you do a ground knowledge portion, and then you do a flying portion. It's the same thing in the airlines. The other thing in the airline is that it's just a required two-man crew minimum. So in this case, you'll meet with a instructor, and then it'll be a captain and a first officer
Hmm.
sitting there trying to, uh, you know, train and learn and accomplish the same goal. You work as a team, and you fly the airplane safely and learn about systems, learn about maneuvers, learn about federal aviation rules and regulations. You learn about all these things that you did in your foundational training back at MTSU. It's a very similar system. And I know when you get into like the professional five lab and you'll actually be in a simulator,
Hmm.
it's very similar. The only difference is, we're have a full motion type simulator, but those basic things that you see there, you'll be reminded of immediately when you go do your first airline training of just
Okay.
that one-on-one kind of personable, talking about things and learning and drawing on the whiteboard, and then going and accomplishing those tasks in the simulator.
Oh, very cool. I mean, that's super comforting. Like, even I know we're in a professional interview setting, but I mean, that's super comforting as a student at MTSU, having that uh, similarity in the future. That's really, really nice. So looking back at building your 1,000 flight hours, since you went to a Part 141 school as MTSU, so when looking back at building up those hours, what was the most challenging technical check ride or certification you had to clear, and what way did you attack it that helped you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, definitely. They were all, had their challenges for sure in their different way, but by far the most challenging one that I ever did was my initial training qualification for the CRJ at PSA Airlines. My first airline, my first jet. That was
Sure.
uh that was the most challenging. They had a pretty tough training environment, footprint. It was a lot of information to digest. They really wanted you to know your stuff, which is good, and it made me feel better as a pilot that I actually knew and understood things that
Hmm.
much more, but it was very challenging. And the best way that I attacked that challenge was that I just took it one day at a time, studied for things that I needed to know for that next lesson, and then always asking questions and being open about it. If I didn't understand something, I was going to say, "Hey, I do not understand this. Can you please explain that again?" Um, because sometimes it just needs to either be said twice or maybe said in a different way for you to really grasp the information that's being told to you.
Hmm.
And sometimes people just that doesn't click. So there was just an overwhelming amount of knowledge when it comes to systems on a jet and how to fly it, and the fact that everything's going so fast. I did so much flying in 172s and diamonds and Seminoles, and it's nothing compared to flying a jet when you take off and you're already doing 200 miles an hour. The wheels comes off. Things just happen so much faster, and your brain needs to be able to process that information much faster. And
Sure.
you kind of just learn and you adapt, and you get into that mindset and process of how things are going to be and what to expect next. They always talk about being ahead of the airplane, not falling behind. So that training was very difficult to be able to do that and to get my brain up to speed on how fast things were moving, and then just the total amount of knowledge that was being given was tough. And I just had to do things one at a time. They give you a syllabus, just like MTSU gives you a syllabus, and you're like, okay, I'm going to learn this day, so I just need to focus on that. Don't branch out and do things that are just going to confuse you. Just work on the task at hand. Take
Yeah.
it one day at a time. Try not to get overwhelmed because it is just so much information, and just always ask questions, whether it be to the instructor that's teaching the entire class basic systems, or your actual simulator instructor that's teaching you the lesson, and you're going to be learning about a category 2 approach or something along those lines. You ask them specific questions that deal with that, and just so that you know and understand and can be on the same page, because it'll really benefit you down the road. But that was by far the most challenging training, and the best way is to just be open and focused and ask questions.
Very good. Very good. Very good. All right. So, did completing your flight training through a Part 141 program give you a noticeable advantage transitioning into that major airline life? And if so, in what way? And if not, why?
Okay. Yeah, I think it did. 141 is great. I did a little bit of Part 61 when I
Okay.
first started flying, and the biggest thing I noticed, obviously, I didn't do all of my training that way, so I can't speak fully to that. I know it is good training, but NTSU and other programs that are 141 certified, they're so structured, and they're built to help students get to that airline goal. uh, just flying a jet in general. And there's things that come with that. And MTSU really structures that for you. So once you get there, like I mentioned earlier, you kind of see those similarities and you
Mhm.
feel somewhat comfortable in the environment because you've, in a way, seen it before. So the biggest thing is, uh, they teach you about once you progress at MTSU and you start getting towards those last lessons, they start talking about um, crew resource management and being able to work as a crew together, and how you can effectively communicate with a crew and have positive communication. You don't want to have anything negatively affecting the safety of the flight, just between two people, and
Right.
that positive communication in certain ways that you can ask things. MTSU will teach you about that. I also did a little bit of time after I finished at MTSU. I was an instructor at Auburn University, so it was another 141 program, and I was just able to kind of see their way of doing things. Even though it was very similar, there were some differences. But in the grand scheme of things, it was the same. And I think the best thing it does is it sets you up for that airline lifestyle and that culture, and it will help you understand how you're going to work as a crew. But like I said, it also help you learn how to do flows and checklists, call outs, things like that.
Hmm.
When you first start flying, it's just you're just fixated on flying the airplane. You're not really so concerned about everything else that's going on. Talking on
Hmm.
the radio, talking to the other pilot, talking to whoever. And then as you start getting further and further along, you realize you need to expand your horizon and your visual cues and your oral cues too on what you're listening to, and be able to listen to what, air traffic control is saying, also listen to what the other pilot's saying, and learning these like certain triggers that will help keep you on the same path. And it's very interesting how you learn those basic things towards the end of your training at MTSU. I mean, you'll learn about it through the whole thing, but they
Yeah.
really start structuring airline life towards the end of it, and you'll learn it, and it'll help you recognize it when you actually get to that step in the airlines. And that was something the biggest thing that I saw at MTSU and at my time at Auburn, and I think it really helped when I got to the airlines.
Very good. Very good. It's comforting to know that this money is not just, just to get the training, but is actually like it's more broad. It helps you just in all aspects. So that's really good. Uh,
Mhm.
what specific qualities or skills do you believe are most critical for managing that high risk cockpit environment that you were just talking about during an unexpected flight situation?
Yeah. I think the biggest one when you're working as a crew in an airline, the biggest thing is that effective communication.
Hmm.
Being able to talk to the person and realize, what is going on, what do we need to do to fix this, and be able to move on from there. And with anything that happens in a high stress environment, there's going to be when that element that introduces the high stress happens, you're going to have a startle factor, and that's going to kind of throw you off your game. Could
Hmm.
elevate your heart rate, could elevate a lot of things, and you don't necessarily react as though as if you were calm, cool, and collected because you've been startled. But they train you real well on being able to like look at certain things and do certain things by the book, the standard operating procedures, and that kind of brings everyone back in on the same page. And then you can uh, see what's going on, analyze and come up with a solution. And the biggest one is just communication, talking to the other person, whether it
Hmm.
be talking to your dispatcher, talking to air traffic control, talking to the flight attendants in the back, just being able to talk and understand is really key. And then, of course, everything always falls back on what I mentioned there, the SOPs. So anytime you've been taught something, you always fall back on your basic knowledge of what you've been taught. So if you can just be ingrained in your mind those basic standard operating procedures, then you'll always fall back on that, on those cues and things to do. And that kind of brings everyone back into a safe environment because you know that the person next to you is going to do the same thing because they've been taught the same thing. And you can both achieve the same goal in some kind of high stress environment, whether it be some kind of system failure or just bad weather that needs a immediate reaction to deviate from something. There's uh, so many things that kind of cue us back in, and communication is a big one, but also just
Hmm.
relying on that SOP knowledge that kind of brings everyone back in on the same page all the time.
Okay. And kind of a follow-up question that kind of came through your answer. So a lot of these captains that you're flying with, uh, yes or no, are they, is this the first time you're flying with that person? And if so, like how does that dynamic work in that professional communication?
Yeah, usually yes, they are the first time you've ever met the person, and it's just that what you've been taught, and
Okay.
you kind of get into this rhythm. It's one of those really weird professions where you're going to go step into an airplane, and fly across the country with 180 people in the back, and you've never met this person at all. You've
Mm,
literally just met them at the gate and had just a cordial little conversation, and now you're flying the jet together. And it's just that those things you've been taught and the things that you've learned in training. It's the same thing when you go through MTSU. You get a new instructor. Yeah, you work with them almost every day, but then you'll go for a stage check or a check ride, and that's somebody new. You'll do a new form of training. That's somebody new. Um, and you just kind of learn as you progress. And then when you get to the airlines, you're just constantly meeting new people, and you learn how to communicate and how to just kind of talk real simply. And you just get to know someone real quick in a 5-minute conversation.
yeah.
And once you step into the jet and you sit in your seats, uh, you start doing your flows, getting the airplane ready. And then next thing you know, the captain's like, "Hey, you done? Okay, yeah, I'm done with my stuff. Okay, all right, let's talk about it." And you'll brief. And then
Hmm.
start doing the brief. And every brief is the exact same way. Line item,
Okay.
line item, line item, line item. You're talking about threats. You're talking about what's going to happen for today. What are we going to do? How are we going to taxi out to this runway? And then once you're completed with that, captain will call for the checklist, right? He calls for the checklist. That brings everybody back in on the same page. You've done it 1,000 times. So no matter who's sitting there, you feel very comfortable because it's something you've done so much. So it's
Okay.
very weird to kind of meet someone for the first time and then do that, but it just becomes second nature. Very rarely will someone deviate even the slightest bit, and you'll notice it. If they say something different that you don't hear, you'll catch on to it pretty quick. That's super rare, and it's usually very minute things that happen, but
Mm,
you will notice it because everyone does literally the exact same thing every single time, every single day, on every single flight. And so it's just a way that you can just knowingly get switched and thrown in with whoever, even from a different base. You could get thrown in with a guy from San Francisco, and I'm based in Chicago. Step into a 737 for 30 seconds, and we're on the same page. It's
Okay,
just
cool.
one of those career fields that you kind of learn to communicate, and you just have the same goal, same training, same checklist, and you just knock it out.
I can definitely see how that commonality and like everybody's there to do the same thing takes away that kind of like, hey, I just met this person. Am I really comfortable? No, like everybody's there to do the same thing. And so I see how that comfort of doing the checklist every single time, it's the same, brings that comfort that you're talking about. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so final question. Obviously, flight training is a large financial investment for the average Joe. So, is this financial investment and rigorous training that's required to join and get to that major airline goal worth it for incoming students? And my follow-up question to that is why and what advice would you give to a student who is evaluating the return on investment?
Yeah, for me personally, and for other students, I 100% think it is worth the investment to do the
Hmm.
training. If you like flying and you feel, you're never going to feel comfortable, I guess, but if you enjoy it and you enjoy learning and you enjoy always, bettering yourself and things like that, it's totally worth the investment. Flying is just such an awesome thing to be able to do, and it's a great way to meet so many incredible people, whether they're have a civilian background, military background, whatever the case may be. It's awesome, and you meet so many different people, learn so many different things, and just being able to have that job, to where you can fly all around the world and learn so much. Traveling in and of itself is just a huge benefit and a great learning experience to learn so much about so many different things. So it's definitely worth the investment. The only thing on your follow up, you mentioned um, for people coming into it now, and if I'd give them any advice, I think is what you mentioned, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the fact that I was very lucky in the time frame I started aviation. Uh, Things were really starting to pick up. There was uh, 9/11, and then there was the 2008 financial crisis. Those things
Hmm.
really detrimented the airlines for a number of years, and around 2013, 14, 15 is when things started to kind of start picking up in the industry, and really things began growing. There was new rules implemented. Those last few airlines were merging, Continental and United merged
Yeah,
together,
yeah.
US Airways and American, things like that. Everything was merging and getting kind of solidified, and things were changing, and then things were growing, more people were traveling, things became safer, and it really started ramping up. Air travel really started ramping up. So me getting into the industry when I did was phenomenal, and it worked out very well for me. But I know now things change, and you hear it a lot. But the industry is cyclical. There's ups and downs. It just happens. But it is 100% worth it. And if you stick to it, and keep trying to better yourself, it's totally worth it. It's if you just do the bare minimum and you just want to, you don't even want to instruct. You just want to go do banner towing or surveying or whatever the case may be, and you don't really want to take that step and do something different, that could limit your success in doing something else, because teaching or could help you learn something even more, could help you meet another student that you're teaching that has this, their parents are pilots and they can help give you information on this, or whatever the case may be. Like if there's an opportunity to do something in
Hmm.
flying and get that next rating or work for this company and do this or that, like it's definitely worth it to do it and to better yourself. And then you could open up new doors that you didn't even know were available until you actually do it. So it definitely is cyclical and things change. It's not as easy as it was right now to just go to school, get the 1,000 hours, and get the call from the regionals. It doesn't really happen right now the same way,
Sure.
but it could change. I mean, it will change. They're still talking about so many people retiring because of the 65 age rule.
Yeah, right.
And then so many people needing to be hired because of the people retiring, plus the expansion that all airlines want to do because air travel just continues to be so popular in the US. It's the best way to travel anywhere, best way to travel, obviously, internationally. So there's definitely growth that's happening, and it will continue to hire pilots. Maybe not at the same rate, but um, there's definitely differences, and it can leave people kind of worried about their future and if they're ever going to call. But it's definitely worth it, in my opinion, and it will happen. But taking those different steps to better yourself with a different rating or whatever the case may be is always good, in my opinion.
Very cool. That's good advice. Everybody at the flight school, like student wise, that I've talked to, they're like always talking about going down to Florida to get their seaplane and going, I'm like, man, that's a good idea. So I can definitely see that. I know that's a small piece of the pie that you were just talking about, but that's what that made me think of.
Hmm.
Uh, so I mean, your insight to commercial aviation today has been invaluable. So thank you for answering all my questions. Uh, are there any questions that you wish you would have asked somebody uh, in, like if you were in my shoes and I was in your shoes, is there any questions that you would have wanted to ask me that you noticed I didn't ask you today?
Uh,
And I know that's really like hard to
yeah,
answer too.
I don't think there's a specific question that I would have asked. The biggest thing that I did was I always just listened to what everyone else was saying a lot of the time, and
Hmm.
most of the time, a question if I ever had would get answered.
Yeah.
Um, so I never really had anything that went totally unanswered as far as the industry goes. It's just the fact that it's such a broad thing. If you want to go to the airlines, there's so many different uh, rules and regulations, and there's a lot of regional airlines, a handful of major airlines, and they all do slightly different things. So learning it all is just learning the bases, learning the type of equipment, like things like that, just come with the experience of just doing it and meeting people and talking to people about different things. But there was never anything when I got here that I really said, "Oh man, I wish I would have asked about that," because I had just going through the training and talking with the instructors and people who came to do job fairs and stuff like that pretty
Hmm.
much answered everything for me. So
Oh, very
I
good.
think I think the questions you asked today were you know fantastic and really do talk about the basics of the commercial aviation route. So I think all those are good. I don't really think there's anything that I really think too hard on that I would have asked again.
Well, very good. Again, thanks so much. I'm going to end the recording, but ask you to stick around for just a few minutes.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, thank you again for this. All right.
Mhm.